Should you watch Little Witch Academia isn't an easy question to answer. It has its high highs and very low lows. So low in fact it'll leave you wondering if you're even watching the same show. So dear viewer, while I wait for Dad to finally come home, let's try and figure out, should you watch Little Witch Academia? Back in 2013, Little Witch was created as a one-off short film which was directed by Yo Yoshinari and written by Masahiko Otsuka. And this little passion project produced by Trigger was pretty great, and I loved the characters, settings, and the themes were genuinely heartwarming. Given the success for this short film, Trigger released a follow-up to Little Witch 2 years later by the name of Enchanted Parade, and it too was also pretty great. So when I heard there was going to be a Little Witch show following this lovable cast of characters, I was admittedly pretty excited. Boy, was that a mistake.
No! God! No! God, please, no! 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 No!
Have you ever been let down by something so hard you literally don't understand how it was even possible to fail that bad? Well, that's sorta how I feel about Little Witch 2017. It's like they took everything charming about the show and just tossed it in the trash. There we go. Perfect. For the uninitiated, Little Witch is about a young girl named Akko. Akko wants to be a witch like her idol Shiny Chariot, who showed her the joy that magic can bring people. The thing is, Akko has no idea how to do magic. So her inexperience often leads her, getting herself, and her friends into trouble. Chariot also seemingly disappears, and her whereabouts are a mystery to just about everyone. Now you're up to speed, let's get right into it. First off, even from the first episode, this show starts to trip up in a really bad way, and it honestly sets up the show for many of its failures later on. The first misstep this show takes is having the first episode be an origin story. The problem with most origin stories is they suck. They're predictable garbage. Just take a look at Spider-Man. Arguably the best one is the one that decides to skip the origin story entirely.
You guys are losers.
And in a similar vein to that, the original Little Witch short film does a great job at telling us what we need to know to understand the story without explaining so much that we start asking tons of questions. This is a trap that Little Witch 2017 falls into right out of the gate, and instead of starting out from where the short film ended, Little Witch 2017 decides, you know what we need? An origin story. And whether you realize it or not yet, this is where the show begins to fall apart. In the first episode, we're introduced to two subplots that will completely derail the show, and by the second season, ruin it entirely. And as much as I'd like to be on the receiving end of an oncoming freight train after watching this show, that doesn't really tell us why. 1. It changes how Akko acquires Shiny Rod, the wand belonging to her idol, and instead of her just stumbling across it in a dungeon below the school, the thing more or less manifests for her like she's the chosen one, and episodes further down the line further cement this premise. Now, Shiny Rod manifesting for her would have been fine, but on top of that, they make Shiny Rod the key to unlocking world-changing magic. But to unlock the words, certain conditions need to be met for her to unlock them. So now the core of what the show is about is forever changed. And I'll get back to why this ruins this show later. But before that key change can even have a chance to ruin the show, the other subplot destroys the tone and setting long before that can even happen. We're first introduced to this strange subplot in the first episode, and it's literally the chink in the armor that leads to the show's inevitable self-destruct. You wouldn't think that such a small detail like a school's financial issues could possibly be that dramatic, but you'd be wrong. It literally opens the floodgate for so many questions that wouldn't even cross someone's mind if it was never mentioned in the first place. And the first question somebody might ask is, how? How is a magic school facing financial issues? It's not like they're a company based around VCR repairs.
Fuck are you doing?
It's literally fucking magic that can do anything. Also in this world, magic is a dying art that people find boring, but how? It's literally never explained at any point. And when they do try to explain it, it only comes off as borderline retarded without actually adding any logic to the phrase, magic is dying. I'd get it if it were a fucking Vegas magic show, but this is real magic that can do almost anything. Even a mundane skill that's taught to children, like the ability to repair things with a simple phrase, is unimaginably valuable. Oh, a priceless vase that my shitty little kid knocked over? Let me call my local witch to repair it in literally half a second. It doesn't make any goddamn sense. It's completely unnecessary, and the magic is growing weaker and dying subplot will become the main driving force of the show. It's mind-bogglingly dumb. And by episode 5, it'll literally become the focus over our main character when you have a dragon steal the school's source of magic, the Sorcerer's Stone, because they owe the dragon money, like he's the fucking IRS. And the way he retrieves the stone is equally as stupid. He just sends some dragons right in, grabs the stone, and then leaves. There are no defenses for this school's only source of magic. It's like watching our main character overcome obstacles and grow as a character was too fucking lame, so let's have this ancient dragon use an electric juicer and talk about his stocks, while at the same time berating the witches for still practicing magic even though it can do fucking anything. This show has the tonal consistency of a Jackson Pollock painting. This whole plot not only doesn't make any sense, but actually ruins the tone, setting, and even the integrity of all the teachers at the school. They're just a bunch of spineless dolts, when before they were wise, strict, and well-educated masters of their craft. But it's almost as if the writers realized how dumb this whole episode was, and instead of having it go on for multiple episodes, it begins and ends in the same episode by having Diana know more than everybody. Even the teachers, who are completely useless throughout the entire show, and she just happens to read Ancient Dragon too and told the dragon to fuck off cause he's a cunt, and bamboozled all the teachers. See, now here's the issue. This show is supposed to be about Akko learning how to be a witch, but by the 5th episode, the entire tone and setting of the show is ruined when the show stops really being about Akko and instead tries to tell as many stories as possible, like the writers didn't really know what plot they wanted for the show, and consequently fail at effectively telling any meaningful story at all. This show has less focus than Michael J. Fox suffering from heroin withdrawal trying to take a picture, and the worst part is the setup for the show is already done. All they had to do was build around it, but they chose to scrap it and work with something new for no goddamn reason. Trigger, I know, and I get where you come from, but this show isn't Kill la Kill, where in that show, the setting is largely interchangeable and you can play fast and loose with the rules, cause for the most part, it's a parody of anime in general. It can be taken lightly, and when Ryuko literally turns into a rocket ship, I don't really care, cause I'm literally watching 2 half-naked women beat the shit out of each other. And for the most part, the show doesn't take itself too seriously, and it works. Except for when it doesn't. With Little Witch, the setting matters. It sets up the entire premise of the show, that being learning magic at magic school. Although Little Witch is an ultimately lighthearted show, it fails at managing to introduce these odd sci-fi elements without coming off as intrusive or just off-putting entirely. While these borderline shark-jumping moments can work in other shows, they just don't here. They fall laughably flat. It was actually at episode 5 I stopped watching. I was so turned off by what the show had become before I later rewatched the rest out of morbid curiosity. You have such jarring shifts in tone and just overall feel of the narrative, especially when you go from this to this. These scenes are just so horribly intrusive, and by the time you get to the 2nd season, if you can even make it that far that is, you just have scratching your head wondering what the fuck any of this has to do with anime Harry Potter. The answer is it doesn't. Trigger, I get it. I get where your roots lie. But there's a time and place for everything, and I'm not sure the lightsabers, mech, and the ICBM were really appropriate given the setting of the show. It's like if I added a violent rape scene in a show about killing goblins. Oh no. Wait, that actually happened? Oh my god. Oh shit, never mind. Okay, I can get behind this. It leaves me asking just one question. Why? How do you not understand what made Little Witch so good in the first place? It had such a purely simple and relatable story with an enchanting setting, and your first thought was to add weird sci-fi elements and just add absurdly strange subplots that have really nothing to do with anything. Was adding magic cell phones and magic routers and weird robotic cubes really the first thing that came to mind when trying to make an interesting story? And that's the real issue with the show. On top of its glaring bad second half, even the first half suffers from significant jumps in quality. It's just such an odd and clunky setup, and this clunkiness continues throughout the whole show, and fluctuates from bad to worse, with the occasional light in the darkness making it worthwhile. There are only a handful of great episodes, especially some that really show growth from Akko as a character, but they're so few and far between it'll leave you asking why you're even watching, especially when you have to slog through filler and just uninteresting episodes where no one really grows as characters, and almost nothing of interest happens. The thing is, the show becomes less and less about Akko, and more about finding these words of power like she's the fucking Dragonborn.
But there's one they fear. In their tongue, he's Dovahkiin, Dragonborn.
And by the second season, she's so desperate to revive these words, she will pursue them even to the detriment of her own character. The first word she learns by the second season has to do with the virtue of patience, but she shows zero patience throughout the entire episode. And I mean it. From start to finish, she rushes everyone that helps her throughout the entire runtime, and by the end, I guess she just learns patience, even though we're never shown that once at any point. And this issue is even further compounded in a later episode where Akko needs to be patient and wait for a tree's dangerous pollen to clear up, just for her to do the exact opposite and go there anyway and almost lose her ability to become a witch. And on top of that, almost die in the process. Just so at the very end she can be rewarded with another word, which is literally just being thankful and really appreciating someone doing something for you? What kind of half-baked bullshit message is that? So not only did she fail to learn or gain any patience, she's rewarded for being impatient. And the thing that makes it even stranger is that while she doesn't learn to be patient at all in the episode where she supposedly and unironically learns the value of patience, she's also very thankful to the Yeti and Saint Nick for helping her cure her friends that are slowly being turned into shrubs. I guess she wasn't that thankful for her friend's survival. Why the fuck didn't she learn the word there? And learn patience in a later episode by not climbing the goddamn tree that could have taken away the little power she actually has? And I know why this is the case, is to flesh out Croy and Ursula's shitty backstory together. That didn't even need to be in the show. Actually, Croy as a character herself didn't need to exist, and neither did these fucking 7 dragon shouts. All it does is change the focus of the show to something far less endearing, because I guess Trigger thought the idea of someone achieving their dreams and the power of believing in yourself was lame.
Previously on Lost.
やっと面白くなった。
My drill is the drill that creates the heavens!
And that's the real problem with this show, is that it very quickly loses its emotional connection to its audience. And I myself am not a fan of the actual random bullshit this show continuously throws at you. Then, in the last 4 episodes, they throw a wrench into the plot when Akko finds out that Ursula is Chariot, and that Chariot also absorbed and stole people's magic during her shows. So instead of Akko just not knowing what she was doing and actually have to work twice as hard as everyone else to make up for a lack of experience, now it's just because she has a disability, I guess?
But why?
After getting T-boned by that subplot out of nowhere, the very next episode you have Chariot getting tricked into using dangerous magic because she got hateful internet comments? What? So Emperor Palpatine tricks her into using the dark side of the Force, while in the process murking her audience and angel-arming the moon. There's also this weird reoccurring theme about internet bullying, and it's just so abrasive given the setting of the show. It's completely out of left field, and when you really think about it, it's just kind of laughable. You have someone who can actually use real magic to do almost anything, and she gets tricked into using space magic because people don't like her show no more, I guess. Okay, Little Witch. Alright. And it's at this point where the show completely devolves beyond all repair. So Croy has a flying Roomba that sucks up all of people's emotions to make magic, and in an earlier episode, there was a football game that's ruling made people upset. So they start rioting, and Croy's little Rubik's Cubes make them angrier or something. And by like the last episode, they mention a coup d'etat because of a football game. Then, with all the bad magic energy, Croy powers her red evil shiny rod she made out of cell phones. But before that, Chariot whips out her lightsaber and tries to stop her from executing Order 66, but fails. Croy then flies away to Arcturus on her magic shiny rod spaceship, and then unlocks the Grand Triskelion. But she isn't the chosen one, or something, and she can't use its power, I guess. Then her Roombas turn on her and turn into an evil Rubik's Cube dragon, and tries to kill her, but not before Akko destroys it. Then that spooky evil energy possesses an ICBM, and Akko unlocks the last word of her dragon shout because she's the chosen one. So it's now up to Disabilities Akko and her friends to intercept the magic ICBM, while the whole world watches from their iPhones that are magically tuned in to this rocket for some reason. It's just sort of like Trigger gave up, especially for an incredibly simple story about a girl learning magic. They somehow turned it into a prophecy child saves the day at the expense of everything that made the show genuinely good in the first place. The writing is bad, the characters are one-dimensional, and the only redeeming quality about the show is its animation. And that's the real deciding factor for whether or not you're going to like this show, and that's if you can get past the horrible tone-breaking and drastic change in focus of the story. And that brings us back to the original question. Should you watch Little Witch Academia 2017? No, it's not worth it. As always, thanks for watching and have a good one.